Hello and welcome to another episode of Sharing is Caring. My name is Klaus Meisel from Agile Get Together, and today's guest is Antonia Landi. Antonia is a product operations consultant and coach, and she will tell us something about effective communication today. But before we start, Antonia, first, welcome. Great that you're here, and maybe you can tell the audience a few more sentences about yourself.
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to talk about something that has been near and dear to my heart for a very long time, which is communication. So my path into tech wasn't actually very straightforward, as many people's is, but I actually studied English literature and journalism. And obviously what I didn't know at that time is that it primed me for being successful in tech, simply by being a good communicator. And as my career progressed through many different paths and roles and companies, I realized that being a good communicator can be so helpful in so many different aspects of my life, not only my career. So yeah, I'm super happy to be here and talk about this.
Yeah, I'm too. I'm happy too. Great to have you here. And yeah, you already said it. Communication was something which helped you through your whole career. And I already said it in the introduction. The topic today is effective communication. And yeah, maybe you tell us something about your experiences.
Absolutely. I mean, so the interesting thing is that good communication looks different for everybody, right? Some people love to talk a lot, very frequently, go into a lot of detail. Some people like to be on the quieter side. So I prefer talking about effective communication specifically instead of good, right? Because good looks different for everybody. In effective communication, I think there are a few ground rules that usually people don't even think about, because we communicate every day. Because a lot of people think, well, it's just talking or it's just writing. You know, I'm just talking. I'm just writing my thoughts down, and that's it. That's all there is to communication. But once you start thinking about it as a tool and something you can use strategically, you start realizing that there is a lot more to it. One example I like to give is thinking about who's going to read what you're writing, or who's going to listen to what you're talking about, right? And what's your goal actually when you're communicating. A lot of the time we do it just because, right? Just because we were invited to a meeting, for example, or some stakeholder needs some update, or somebody else in the organization decided that you have to write a weekly newsletter, so you just do it. But when you start thinking about who is going to read this, right, and what's my goal in writing this, then you can become much more deliberate in your communication.
Okay, and yeah, you talked about speaking and writing, but I think there are yeah other parts like body language,
Absolutely.
face and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's something very interesting happened when the pandemic kicked off and we all had to go into home office, is that, and not, I didn't really realize this until we sort of went back to the offices, a lot of us, but on Zoom, everybody's the same height. And I'm very short. I'm quite small, I'm quite short. So for me to be in a meeting, or even presenting in a room, I really have to change my body language. I have to sort of make myself bigger and make sure that, you know, I'm present, like the other participant. So I really love that you pointed this out. And I think it's something that I find very interesting, is that if I deliberately change my body language to something more present, more open, more confident, I actually start feeling more confident, right? So that's something that's very powerful, especially if you do, you know, your first couple of public speaking things and you're not entirely sure of yourself. Just pretend, you know, command the stage as if you were sure of yourself. And it actually goes a long way in helping how you feel.
Yeah, that's very interesting that body language and feelings, there's a connection between the
Absolutely.
both. Yeah, you mentioned the ground rules for effective communication at the beginning, and you told us already that it's important to have a goal in communication. Are there more ground rules you have, or you can tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, okay, let's take something quite concrete. For example, a presentation. Could be PowerPoint, Google Slides, you know, whatever you're using. There's a few mistakes that people do quite commonly. One of them is just absolutely filling the slides with text, right? There again, you need to think about what's the goal of this presentation. Is this supposed to be a standalone document, meaning that somebody is going to read this and will know exactly what it's about without having anyone else presenting, right? So is this a document that here's the link, you know, it's a playbook, or these are guidelines for how we do such and such at this company? That, fair enough, needs to have a larger amount of text, right? And that's fine because it's not distracting from anyone speaking. The thing is, when you give a presentation in person or live and you fill the slide full of text, what happens is the audience will start reading, right? Because that's where the information is, and they'll stop listening to you. So it's actually the fewer sort of bullet points or the more concise you can be in your slides, the more effective a presentation you'll give, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive, right? But something to remember is sort of the rule of threes, right? Good things usually come in threes. And if you have bullet points, make them 3. Any more than 3 is, again, going to be too much. It's going to be distracting. And you have to ask yourself whether you're now going into a different topic, right? If you genuinely have more than 3 bullet points for any given slide, then I would say break it up or make it visual. What I've done in the past is I've had more than 3 points, but I have, instead of writing it out, I used icons. And then you can talk about each icon and people will still be listening to you while having a visual aid. But it's very important to remember that those kinds of presentations, you then really need to speak on top of it, right? They're rarely going to be useful in their own format. I gave a talk on stakeholder management recently, and one of the slides was literally a picture of a helicopter. And if I give that slide deck to someone, nobody knows what that means. Like, I really need to be talking over it. But at the same time, when I write a playbook, I did this recently for, you know, Slack guidelines. That is something that stands alone. There can be a little bit more text, but then I really need to make sure that all the information is in that deck so that I don't need to be there talking over it.
But these are all points. You have your goal, and then you decide how to reach that goal.
Exactly. I mean, it's, you know, you can think of it as UX, actually. Like, what's the experience of the person consuming this content? Is this person going to be at home on their own? Are they going to be watching a recording of you talk? Or how likely are they to just skim through it? That's another thing, especially with written communication. You need to make it readable so that even if somebody is very short on time, they get the highlights, right? So you can use, you know, bold to really highlight sort of the most important 2 words in any given sentence. You can use icons to sort of break it up visually. Also, make sure that your sentences are on the shorter side. And you make sure you also have paragraphs, right? Like reading a huge wall of text is a chore for anyone, and it doesn't matter how engaging the topic is. So structuring a document with, bullets and paragraphs, and I like to use emoji here and there. Obviously, that's not everybody's style, but just making it also readable and visually appealing will go a long way in keeping your audience engaged.
Yeah, sure. Maybe at the end you have a tip for the people who are watching this video, and for me as well. We want to use, or we want to communicate effective, and I think at the first point there's a lot. You have to watch so many different things. I have to, in a presentation, for example, I have to be aware how I speak, how my body language is, how I look. Do you have any recommendations to learn that or to train that? To get everything together?
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% a learnable skill, right? Like, that's the wonderful thing about it. Like, I think to a certain extent, I maybe had a natural affinity for it. So when people sort of watch me speak, think, oh, but it's easy for you, like this is your personality. But it's 100% a learnable skill. Honestly, practice just makes better. Like, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. And there are many different people, for example, with conference speaking, right? So many different speakers have different rituals. Some people record themselves. Some people spend the morning before their talk just chilling out, listening to music, being by themselves. I think recording yourself is always a good idea. We are rarely aware of how many filler words we use, like and etc., etc. And also, the more comfortable you are with the content of the presentation, the more confident you'll be in giving it. And also, don't underestimate the power of clothing. Really, some people feel like, oh, this is a professional setting, I have to wear something that is out of my comfort zone, especially in tech. A lot of us don't wear a suit, right? So when we feel like we need to give a big presentation, we have to wear a suit. Get one that you're comfortable in, for example. If at all possible, spruce it up, but stay true to yourself. Because if you wear something that you're already not confident in, it's not really your style, then again, you're not going to be able to feel confident in yourself and in your presentation. But I think, record yourself, practice, you really do get better over time.
Okay, I think that's a good final word. Thanks a lot, Antonia, for being here today for these insights and talking about effective communication. Unfortunately, this is only a short video interview, but for all who are watching this and who want to hear and see more from Antonia, I have a spoiler because she's talking about product ops or introducing product ops in a month on March the 23rd at 6 p.m. So save the date. We will also publish it on LinkedIn and on our homepage. I'm already looking forward to your talk. Thanks again for today. And everyone who watched this, feel free to comment, to write feedback, to share your experience. We are very curious.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.